So with See, Hear, Feel, we pay attention to where our awareness is drawn naturally. When we practice, we just notice where our attention goes. And if we find our attention landing on something like a visual object, we we use that as a moment to note the experience. So right now, over to my left, I'm noticing a salt lamp. There's a salt lamp on my desk. And if I were practicing this technique called See, Hear, Feel, I would let my attention land on that object and note it. And noting in Unified Mindfulness is a process of acknowledging a sensory event and focusing on it for a few seconds, anywhere between like 3 and 9-ish seconds. So I see the salt lamp, and I have momentary high concentration, staying interested in the details of this experience of seeing. I'm landing there, focusing on it, and I let it go. And then I notice, now I'm noticing there's some like kind of tightness in my throat. And in the technique, the invitation is to then note that. Oh, this is a feeling sensation. And I'm acknowledging it, and I'm focusing on it. And then, just to use the last example, in between the times that I'm speaking, I can hear the hiss in my ears, in my headphones. And hearing that, it's kind of restful, it's subtle. But my attention landed there, I keep noticing it. So in this technique, I'm just going to land there for a few seconds and acknowledge and focus on it. So as we're doing this technique, one of the options is to use labels. So let's say we were going to do a 10-minute practice, set a timer for 10 minutes, and just allow awareness to do what it's doing. You continually just acknowledge and you note, and if you want, you can use labels. Labels are very helpful for beginning practitioners to help develop the muscle of concentration and equanimity. Some people, when they first learn this technique, they can be resistant to the idea of labeling. It seems like this thing I need to do. There's like, it's like maybe a little bit of effort, but it's really a light touch. Some people might have an association with meditation practice that they're really just showing up to be restful. And that's understandable. And meditation can be restful, and there are lots of practices where you can focus on that if you want to. And I would say a technique like See, Hear, Feel, where you're noting and labeling, there's this little bit of effort, but you can do it in a restful way. And as a technique, it's very powerful for cultivating these basic skills of concentration, sensory clarity, and equanimity. I want to check in with you. Are there any questions coming up about anything I've said so far?
No. Yeah, no, you're explaining it pretty well.
Cool. Maybe I don't know if I might have missed some details, but I want to maybe take us into a guided practice, and
Yeah.
we can find out if I've missed anything and see if there's anything that emerges afterwards. We can
Yeah.
talk about it.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, cool. So I want to invite the listener into, if you're in a place where you can sit still and find a posture that's wakeful and upright in the spine, and then relaxing down around that central pillar. It's helpful in meditation practice to find this nice balance in the body between wakefulness and ease. Wakefulness, alertness, and rest. And this posture in the body can actually support our access to equanimity. So to start, before we go into the formal technique, let's just take a little tour of our sensory experience. So you can actually start with eyes open. You do not have to practice with eyes closed with this technique. And just notice what you're seeing. You can look around like you might normally look around a space. Just being interested in the experience of seeing. Noticing what you see with your open eyes. In Unified Mindfulness, they call this see out, as contrasted to seeing in, which is your inner visual experience. So right now we're just working with the outer. Just noticing what you see. And it's also an option to kind of keep a soft gaze, kind of a downward, defocused gaze, is a way to induce a kind of restful visual experience with open eyes. And then if it feels okay for you, you can close the eyes. This is the next sensory space we're going to be working with, is the inner experience of seeing. So there's the mental screen. When we close our eyes, we can have a sense of the mental screen. And there may be images on the mental screen, or it might be blank. I've come to learn that some people don't have a lot of mental imagery. It's fine if it's more restful. You can just notice the lack of image activity. And if you are a person who sees mental images, you could kind of get to know this space. You might envision like a red apple. You can see that on your mental screen. The image of a mountain or a bird. Or maybe there's not a lot of activity there. So if it's restful, you can notice that. This is the space of see in. Now letting that go. If you want to open your eyes back up, you can, or you can keep them closed. Let's move our attention now to hearing. This would be the hear out space in Unified Mindfulness. So it's what we're hearing with our eardrums. It might be sounds, might be activity, things happening around us, making sound, or it might be quiet. So we can notice activity or rest with our ears. And I'm going to pick up the pace just a little bit here. Now letting go of hearing out, and let's move to hear in. So this is the place where mental chatter happens. Or maybe if you get like a song stuck in your head, this is the space or location where you hear the activity of your mind. Just notice if you can hear your own voice, if there's any kind of mental chatter. You could even think of a song you like. You might notice what it's like to hear that. It's also very interesting to notice when the mind is quiet. It's a kind of auditory rest in the mind. And then lastly, let's move to the body now. This is the feel space. We can start with feel out is the Unified Mindfulness jargon, feel out. And that is anything we feel in the physical body. It could be your breathing sensations, it could be temperature, tingling, maybe your heartbeat, an itch, anything that you relate to a physical body sensation. Also, for the sake of simplicity, Unified Mindfulness puts the senses of smell and taste into the feel category to keep things simple, because there's a kind of a somatic component to those. So smell and taste are included in the feel space. And then lastly, let's move to feel in. And feel in Unified Mindfulness is any emotional experience, the way that emotions feel in the body. So maybe there's an emotion present right now, whether it's joyfulness or maybe anxiety, whatever it might be, just notice how that feels in the body. If you want to experiment, if there's not an emotion present, you can just notice that. The lack of emotional activity could be experienced as emotional rest. But if you want to try, if there's nothing present, you could maybe take a moment to evoke something you're grateful for, or someone you're grateful for. Generate a little positivity if that's accessible to you right now. It's okay if it's not. You might play with just thinking of something you're grateful for, a beautiful experience you had in your life. And then just notice any correlating emotional body sensation that accompanies that. Okay, so now I'm going to invite you to let that go. And we're going to go into the proper see, hear, feel technique and work broadly with sensory experience. And the invitation here, we'll just probably just be here for a few more minutes, is to note and label your sensory experience. Just notice what happens. Just notice where awareness goes all by itself. And when it lands on something, you just acknowledge and focus on that experience. And the invitation is to use a label. So I'm going to give an example of what this practice might sound like. Here, see, see, hear, feel. That might be what the labeling sounds like. I said hear, I was hearing the hiss in my headphones. When I said see twice, I was seeing the blank, restful screen behind my closed eyes. And then my attention went back to the hiss. I said hear, I labeled that as hear. And then I felt the sensations in my hands and I labeled that feel. So give that a try. Your labels can be internal, can just be mental labeling, that's fine. If you're in a place where you can label out loud, that is welcome. If you notice more than one sensory event at the same time, like seeing and hearing at the same time, you can just pick one. No need to deliberate too much. Just pick one and acknowledge and focus on it with a label. The intention with the labeling is to use an equanimous voice, kind of even keel, that can support your equanimity in relation to whatever you're noting. Just keeping it kind of a gentle tone of voice and going at a pace that works for you. This is your practice. It can be a little faster than the way I demonstrated it, or even slower. The point is not to try to capture everything you notice. There will be a lot happening in our sensory experience. Just allow your attention to land. Whatever sensory event draws you, acknowledge and focus on it. Let it go and repeat. And as we stay with this process, we're cultivating concentration by staying with the instructions. As we stay with the instructions, we're cultivating concentration. And as we acknowledge and focus on sensory events, we're cultivating sensory clarity. We cultivate clarity in terms of detecting sensory events and discerning their qualities, getting to know them. What are they like? Where are they located? How strong are they? Is it moving or changing? Staying interested and curious about the details of a sensory event. This cultivates sensory clarity. And lastly, we embark on this whole process, this whole technique, with the intention to be equanimous in relation to whatever arises. We're allowing experience to move freely. And we label with that gentle tone of voice that supports equanimity. So even if there's something really painful in your experience, whether it's physical or emotional pain, the invitation is just to acknowledge that. Feel. You can just use that label, feel. Allowing it to be there, staying open, gentle, curious, holding experience with care. So this technique is a way to build these basic skills of concentration, sensory clarity, and equanimity in relation to the full spectrum of sensory experience. In this way, it's a powerful technique to bring into daily life. So, as you're ready, if you want to just notice what it's like to be you right now after having practiced this technique, maybe for the first time, noticing if there's any pleasantness in your experience, giving yourself permission to notice that and appreciate any qualities of well being or clarity or rest or equanimity. If those things aren't present, it's totally okay. Doesn't mean you did anything wrong. It's a practice. We are training in these skills. But if there are benefits, it's helpful to give yourself permission to notice them. And as we come out of our practice and continue our conversation, we can potentially maintain some of these skills, sensory clarity and equanimity, as we continue the conversation. So, yeah, thank you for practicing with me here, Brett, and listeners as well. Thank you. And if there's any questions that come up for you, Brett, about anything we just did, I'd be down to explore those.